The dusty streets of Piñon, New Mexico, had seen plenty of broken souls drift through. But Sienna Ortega was different in a way that made even hardened gamblers look away from her vacant stare. Reed O'Sullivan first saw her on a blistering August afternoon in 1878, standing motionless outside the general store while the rest of the town bustled around her like water around a stone. She was perhaps 23 years old, with dark hair pulled back severe and tight, wearing a faded calico dress that had once been blue. Her face was beautiful in the way abandoned churches are beautiful, all hollow spaces and forgotten grace. But it was her eyes that stopped him mid-stride. They were brown and clear and completely empty, as if someone had reached inside her chest and stolen something vital, leaving only the shell behind. Reed tied his horse to the hitching post and approached slowly, the way he might approach a skittish mare. He was 26, tall and lean from years of ranch work, with sun-weathered skin and hair the color of red clay. He had just signed on as foreman at the Carrizo Ranch 3 miles outside town, and he had come to Piñon for supplies and maybe a decent meal that he had not cooked himself over a campfire. "Madam," he said, touching the brim of his hat, "you need some help." She turned her head toward him with mechanical precision. Her lips moved, forming words that came out flat and toneless. "No, thank you." But she did not move, and Reed found himself planted to the same spot, unable to walk away. There was something about the absolute stillness of her that bothered him like a stone in his boot. People were not meant to be that still. They were not meant to look that empty. "You waiting for someone?" he tried again. "No. You feeling all right?" "Yes." Each answer came with no inflection, no life. It was like talking to a photograph. Reed shifted his weight, feeling foolish but unable to leave her standing there like some sort of beautiful ghost. A wagon rattled past, kicking up dust, and she did not blink, did not turn her head, did not react at all. That was when Mrs. Henderson from the boarding house came hurrying over, her face creased with concern. "Oh, Mr. O'Sullivan, I see you have met Miss Ortega. Sienna, dear, you have been standing out here for near an hour. Come inside out of this sun." "I am fine," Sienna said in that same flat voice. Mrs. Henderson took her gently by the elbow. "Of course you are, dear, but come along anyway." She glanced at Reed with eyes that held a wealth of sadness. "She does this sometimes, just stands and stares at nothing. Poor lamb." Reed watched as Mrs. Henderson guided Sienna into the boarding house, and he felt something shift in his chest, something he could not quite name. He went about his business, bought his supplies, ate a plate of beef and beans at the cantina, but all afternoon his mind kept circling back to that empty-eyed woman and the strange ache her stillness had produced in him. That evening, Reed found himself asking questions. The ranch hands were happy to talk over whiskey and cards in the bunkhouse. They told him that Sienna Ortega had come to Piñon 2 years ago, bought by her husband Martin Ortega, a wealthy rancher who owned land to the south. They told him that Martin Ortega had been a cruel man, given to drinking and violence, and that Sienna had lived in terror for 3 years, until the influenza took him last winter. They told him she had inherited the ranch and the money, but that she never smiled, never laughed, never showed any emotion at all. She just existed, like a clock that kept ticking long after everyone had left the house. "Heard she used to be different," one hand named Tommy said, dealing cards with practiced ease. "Her cousin came through last spring, said Sienna was full of life before she married. Said she had a laugh that could light up a room, but Ortega beat that out of her along with everything else." Reed felt anger kindle in his gut, hot and sharp. He had seen plenty of hard men in his years drifting through the territories, men who thought their fists gave them the right to break whatever they wanted. But knowing what had been done to Sienna, seeing the result of that cruelty made him want to put his fist through something. "Nobody helps her?" he asked. Tommy shrugged. "What's to help? She has got money, a ranch. She pays her hands fair. She just does not talk much, does not go out much. Keeps to herself. Some folks think she is simple-minded now, addled by what she went through. Others just figure she is grieving in her own way, though nobody can figure what she has got to grieve over losing a man like Martin Ortega." Reed could not sleep that night. He lay in his bunk, staring at the dark ceiling, thinking about brown eyes that held no light and a woman who stood still as a statue under the burning New Mexico sun. He thought about laughter that had died, about joy that had been beaten into silence, and before he fully understood what he was doing, he had made himself a promise. He was going to hear Sienna Ortega laugh if it was the last thing he did on this earth. The next morning, Reed rode into town before dawn. He found Sienna's ranch easily enough. It was well maintained, with good fences and fat cattle grazing in the pastures. The ranch house itself was a low adobe structure with a wide porch and flowers planted in clay pots that were dying from neglect. He knocked on the door and waited, hat in hand, while the sun climbed higher and sweat began to trickle down his spine. When Sienna opened the door, she looked at him with that same blank expression. She wore a simple gray dress and her hair was in a long braid over one shoulder. "Yes." "Morning, Miss Ortega. My name is Reed O'Sullivan. I am foreman over at the Carrizo Ranch. I was wondering if you might need some help with anything around here." "I have hands for that." "I do not mean ranch work. I mean anything else. Repairs, errands in town, heavy lifting, whatever you need." She stared at him for a long moment. Why? It was a fair question. Reed chose his words carefully. "Because I got time on my hands some mornings before I am needed at Carrizo, because I am new to Piñon and could use the extra work. Because those flowers on your porch are dying and it seems a shame." Something flickered in her eyes, so brief he almost missed it. "I do not need charity. I am not offering charity. I am offering work. You can pay me if you want, or you can just let me fix those shutters that are hanging crooked. Either way suits me fine." She was silent for so long he thought she would simply close the door in his face. But then she stepped back and said, "The shutters are in the barn. Tools are there too." It was not exactly a warm invitation, but Reed took it. He spent the morning repairing shutters and fixing a section of porch railing that had come loose. Sienna did not speak to him again, but once he saw her watching from a window, her face expressionless as always. When he finished, he knocked on the door to tell her he was done. She opened it and looked past him at the repairs. "Thank you. You are welcome. I will come back tomorrow if that is all right with you. Those flowers need tending and I saw some fence posts that could use attention." "You do not have to do that, I know, but I am going to anyway." For the first time he saw confusion cross her face, a tiny crack in that blank mask. She did not understand why someone would offer help without being asked, without wanting something in return. It made Reed's chest ache to realize how little kindness she must have known. He came back the next day, and the next, and the next. Each morning before his duties at Carrizo Ranch, Reed would ride to Sienna's place and find something that needed fixing. He repaired the chicken coop, mended tack in the barn, repotted the dying flowers and watered them until they began to bloom again. Sienna never said much, but she stopped asking why he kept coming. She would bring him water or coffee, leave it on the porch rail without a word, and retreat back into the house. 2 weeks into this routine, Reed was replacing boards on the front steps when Sienna came out and sat down on the porch, just watching him work. It was the first time she had voluntarily stayed in his presence for more than a minute. "Why are you doing this?" she asked after a long silence. Reed looked up from the board he was measuring. Doing what? Coming here. Fixing things. You do not know me. He set down his tools and wiped his hands on his jeans. No, madam, I do not, but I would like to, and it seems like maybe you could use a friend. I do not need friends, maybe not. But everybody needs something, even if it is just someone to water the flowers while they figure out what that something is. She looked at him directly then, really looked at him, and Reed held her gaze steady. He wanted her to see that he meant no harm, that he was not like the man who had taken her laughter away. After a moment, she looked away, her fingers twisting in the fabric of her skirt. He hated laughter, she said suddenly, her voice so quiet he had to lean closer to hear. He said it was frivolous, stupid. He said women who laughed too much were indecent. Reed felt that hot anger again, but he kept his voice gentle. He was wrong. Was he? She turned back to him, and there was something raw in her eyes now, something that looked almost like feeling. I do not even remember what it was like, to laugh, to feel happy. It has been so long, I think maybe he was right. Maybe I am just broken now. You are not broken, Reed said firmly. You are hurting. There is a difference. Is there? Yes, madam, broken things cannot heal. Hurting things can. It just takes time and the right kind of care. She studied him for a long moment, and Reed could see her trying to decide whether to believe him. Finally, she stood up and went back inside without another word. But the next morning when he arrived, there was fresh coffee already made and a plate of biscuits waiting on the porch rail. It was a small thing, but it felt like progress. As the weeks passed, Reed began to learn the rhythms of Sienna's days. She rose early before dawn and tended to her ranch with methodical efficiency. She spoke little to her hands, but they respected her, perhaps because she paid well and never asked them to do anything she would not do herself. She went into town only when necessary, always moving through the streets like a ghost, never stopping to chat or socialize. She ate meals alone, slept alone, existed alone in that big adobe house that echoed with emptiness. But slowly, so slowly Reed almost did not notice at first, she began to soften around him. She started to ask him questions. Where was he from? How long had he been working ranches? Did he have family? Reed answered honestly, telling her about growing up in Texas, about losing his parents to fever when he was 16, about drifting through the territories working whatever jobs he could find until he landed in New Mexico. What made you stay in Piñon? She asked one morning. They were sitting on the porch, drinking coffee as the sun painted the desert gold and red. Reed looked at her, at the way the light caught in her dark hair, at the tiny lines around her eyes that spoke of sorrows too heavy for her years. I think I was waiting for a reason to stay, he said. And then I found one. She did not ask what that reason was, but something shifted in her expression, a softness that had not been there before. She looked away quickly, as if afraid of what he might see in her face. I should start breakfast, she said, standing abruptly. Let me help. She paused, surprised. You do not have to do that, I know, but I am going to anyway. It became their new routine. Reed would come in the mornings and they would work together in the kitchen, cooking eggs and frying potatoes, moving around each other with increasing ease. At first, Sienna was stiff and awkward, as if she had forgotten how to be around another person in such a domestic space. But gradually she relaxed, and Reed caught glimpses of who she must have been before Martin Ortega tried to destroy her. She had a precise way of cutting vegetables, a particular order to how she liked things done. Once, she corrected the way he was slicing bread, and there was the faintest hint of exasperation in her voice that made Reed want to grin like a fool. One morning in late September, Reed arrived to find Sienna in the barn, struggling with a saddle that was too heavy for her to lift onto her horse. He took it from her without a word and heaved it into place, cinching the straps with practiced hands. "Where are you headed?" he asked. "North pasture. Some of my hands said there is a break in the fence line. I need to check it." "I will come with you." She opened her mouth to protest, then closed it again. "All right." They rode out together into the vast emptiness of the New Mexico desert, where the sky stretched forever and the mountains rose purple in the distance. The air was cooler now that autumn was coming, sharp and clean in Reed's lungs. Sienna rode well, he noticed, with an easy seat and steady hands. Another glimpse of who she had been before. They found the break in the fence easily enough, where the wire had snapped and curled back like metal ribbon. Reed dismounted and started making repairs while Sienna held the post steady. They worked in companionable silence, the kind that did not need filling with empty words. When they finished, Sienna wiped her hands on her jeans and looked out across the pasture. "I used to love this," she said quietly, "riding out, checking the land. Feeling like I was part of something bigger than myself." "Used to?" Reed asked. "Now I just do it because it needs to be done. I do not feel anything. I have not felt anything in so long." She turned to him and there was desperation in her eyes. "How do you make yourself feel again? How do you remember how?" Reed moved closer slowly, giving her time to step back if she wanted. She did not. He reached out and took her hand, holding it gently in his rough, calloused palm. "You start small," he said. "You notice little things, the way the sun feels warm on your face, the smell of coffee in the morning, the sound of rain on the roof. You let yourself have those small moments and eventually they add up to something bigger." She looked down at their joined hands, and he saw her throat work as she swallowed. "What if I cannot?" "Then I will keep reminding you until you can." She pulled her hand away, but not unkindly. "Why do you care so much about me? You do not even know me." "I know enough," Reed said. "I know you are strong. I know you are kind to your hands and you take care of things that need caring for. I know someone hurt you bad, but you are still here, still standing, still trying. That tells me everything I need to know." Tears welled in her eyes, the first real emotion he had seen from her beyond that flat emptiness. She turned away quickly, brushing at her face with angry movements. "I do not cry. I have not cried since he died. I will not cry now." "It is all right if you do." "No." Her voice was fierce. "If I start, I do not think I will be able to stop." Reed understood. She had built walls around herself so high and thick that even her own grief could not get through. She was afraid that if she let herself feel anything, the pain would consume her. So she felt nothing at all, safe behind her walls of ice. They rode back to the ranch in silence, but it was a different kind of silence than before. Something had shifted between them, some barrier had started to crack. When they unsaddled the horses, Sienna's hand brushed against his and she did not pull away immediately. When she thanked him for his help, there was warmth in her voice that had not been there before. That night, lying in his bunk at Carrizo Ranch, Reed thought about Sienna's tears that had not fallen and her laughter that had died years ago. He thought about the long road ahead, the patience it would take to help her find her way back to herself. But he was a man who knew about patience. You could not work with horses or cattle without learning to wait, to move slow, to earn trust inch by careful inch. He could do the same for Sienna. He would do the same for Sienna. The next morning, Reed brought a harmonica. It was old and dented, something he had carried for years but rarely played. He sat on Sienna's porch and started playing while he waited for her to wake, simple tunes that his mother had taught him before she died. When Sienna opened the door, she stopped short at the sound. "What are you doing?" "Playing music," Reed said, pausing between notes. "Figured the morning could use some." "I did not know you played." "There is a lot you do not know about me yet, just like there is a lot I do not know about you, but we have got time to figure it out." She sat down beside him, wrapping her shawl tighter against the morning chill. "Play something else." So he did. He played every song he could remember, watching her face from the corner of his eye. She did not smile, but she listened intently, and once he thought he saw her foot tap in time to the rhythm. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "That was nice," she said finally. "Thank you." It became another part of their routine. Reed would play music in the mornings, simple, cheerful tunes meant to chase away the darkness. Sienna would listen, and sometimes she would hum along so quietly he could barely hear it. But it was something. It was progress. October came, bringing cooler nights and winds that smelled of sage and distant rain. Reed started spending more time at Sienna's ranch, often staying through the afternoon to help with bigger projects. He fixed the roof where it leaked, repaired a broken wagon wheel, helped her hands move cattle to better pasture. Sienna worked beside him more often now, and he could see strength returning to her movements, purpose to her actions. One afternoon, they were in the barn organizing tack when a mouse darted across the floor. It startled Sienna so badly she jumped back, stumbling into Reed. He caught her automatically, his hands on her waist to steady her. They froze like that, pressed close together, and Reed could feel her heart hammering against his chest. "Sorry," she said breathlessly. "It surprised me." Nothing to be sorry for, but she did not move away, and neither did he. They stood there in the dusty barn with autumn light slanting through the cracks in the walls, and Reed felt something shift again, something deeper than friendship. He could smell lavender in her hair, feel the warmth of her body against his. Her face was tilted up toward him, her eyes wide and dark, and for a moment he thought about what it would be like to kiss her. Then Sienna stepped back, breaking the moment. "We should finish this," she said, her voice unsteady. "Right. Yeah." They worked in awkward silence after that, both of them too aware of the other, of what had almost happened. When Reed left that evening, Sienna walked him to his horse, something she had never done before. "Reed," she said as he swung into the saddle, "thank you for everything. For not giving up on me." "I am not going anywhere," he promised. "Not unless you tell me to. I do not want you to go." The words hung between them, full of meaning, and Reed felt his heart kick hard against his ribs. He touched the brim of his hat and rode away before he could do something foolish, like tell her he was falling in love with her. But he was. He knew it with the same certainty he knew the sun would rise tomorrow. He was falling in love with Sienna Ortega, with her quiet strength and hidden sorrows, with the woman she was trying so hard to become again. He was falling in love with the ghost of her laughter and the promise of her smile. The question was whether she could learn to love him back, whether her heart was too damaged to let anyone in. Reed did not know the answer, but he was determined to find out. November brought colder weather and talk of early snow in the mountains. Reed continued his morning visits, though now he often stayed all day, working alongside Sienna and her hands. The other ranch workers had accepted his presence without question, understanding in the way that working men do that something was growing between their boss and the Carrizo foreman. One morning, Reed found Sienna in the kitchen staring at a calendar on the wall. She looked pale, her hands trembling slightly where they gripped the edge of the table. "What is wrong?" he asked immediately. "It is November 15th. Reed waited, not understanding. "I married him on November 15th, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. 7 years ago. I was 18 years old and so stupid. I thought he loved me. I thought marriage would be like the stories my mother told me, full of partnership and respect and joy." She laughed, but it was a broken, bitter sound that made Reed's chest hurt. "I was a fool. You were young. You could not have known what he would become." He did not become anything. He was always that way. He just hid it well until after the wedding. She turned to face Reid, and there was anguish in her eyes. Do you know what it is like to realize you have sold yourself into hell? That there is no escape, no way out, because society says you belong to him now? That you have to endure whatever he decides to do to you because you are his property? Reid crossed the kitchen and pulled her into his arms without thinking, without asking permission. She stiffened for a moment, then collapsed against him, her face pressed to his chest. She did not cry, but he could feel her shaking. "You are not property," Reid said fiercely. "You never were." He was wrong. Everything he told you, everything he did to you, it was all wrong. But it broke me anyway. No, you are still here, still standing. That means you are not broken. She pulled back enough to look up at him, and Reid saw something in her eyes that had not been there before. Trust. Hope. Something that looked almost like the beginnings of love. His breath caught in his throat. "I do not know how to be with someone," she whispered. "Not in a good way. He is the only man I have ever known, and he made it into something ugly, something to be feared." "Then let me show you different," Reid said softly. "Let me show you what it is supposed to be like. Gentle, kind. A choice you make because you want to, not because you have to." "What if I cannot? What if he ruined me for anything good?" "He did not. I promise you he did not." Reid cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing along her cheekbones. He moved slowly, carefully, giving her every opportunity to pull away. When his lips touched hers, it was the softest whisper of a kiss, barely there at all. Sienna went very still, and for a moment Reid thought he had made a terrible mistake. Then she kissed him back. It was tentative and unpracticed, as if she was learning something new, something she had forgotten how to do. Reid kept it gentle, pouring every ounce of tenderness he possessed into that kiss. When they finally pulled apart, Sienna's eyes were wet with unshed tears. "That was different," she said wonderingly. "That is how it should be. Will you do it again?" Reid smiled and kissed her again, longer this time, but still gentle, still careful. He felt her hands come up to rest against his chest, felt the way she leaned into him as if drawing strength from his presence. When they broke apart, she was almost smiling. Not quite, but almost, and it was the most beautiful thing Reid had ever seen. They spent the rest of the day together, not talking much but existing in each other's space with new awareness. Reid played his harmonica while Sienna prepared lunch, and she hummed along without seeming to realize she was doing it. They ate together on the porch, watching the clouds build over the mountains, and Sienna's hand found his and held on tight. That evening, before Reid left, Sienna walked him to his horse again. "Will you come back tomorrow?" she asked. "Every day," he promised, "for as long as you will have me." "What if that is forever?" Reid felt his heart expand in his chest. "Then I guess I will be here forever." She stood on her toes and kissed him, brief and sweet, then stepped back with the faintest hint of color in her cheeks. "Good night, Reid." "Good night, Sienna." He rode back to Carrizo Ranch with his heart singing, barely feeling the cold wind that whipped across the desert. He had kissed Sienna Ortega. She had kissed him back. And for the first time since he met her, she had looked at him with something other than emptiness in her eyes. The next morning, Reid woke to find his boss, Thomas Carrizo, waiting for him in the barn. Thomas was a good man, fair and honest, and he had been pleased with Reid's work as foreman. But now he looked concerned. "Reid, we need to talk about your arrangement with Miss Ortega." Reid tensed. "What about it? You have been spending a lot of time over there." "The hands are starting to talk, wondering if you are still committed to your job here." "I am," Reid said immediately. "I have never missed a day of work, never shirked my responsibilities. I know that, and I appreciate it. But you are splitting yourself between two ranches, and I am worried it is going to catch up with you eventually." Thomas paused, then added more gently, "I am also worried about Miss Ortega's reputation. A single woman and a single man spending so much time together, people will talk. Reed felt his jaw tighten. People should mind their own business. Maybe so. But they do not. Look, I like you, Reed. You are a good worker and a decent man. If you care about Miss Ortega the way it seems you do, you need to think about making things proper. Give her your name. Protect her from gossip. I have thought about it, Reed admitted. Every day I think about it, but she is not ready. She just got out of a bad marriage. The last thing she needs is me pushing her into another one before she is healed. Thomas nodded slowly. That is fair. But you might ask yourself if maybe having someone who loves her, who treats her right, might be exactly what she needs to heal. Reed thought about that conversation all day as he worked. Was Thomas right? Would marrying him help Sienna heal? Or would it just trap her in another situation where she felt she had no control? He did not want to be like Martin Ortega in any way, did not want her to feel obligated or pressured. But he also could not deny that he wanted to marry her, wanted to wake up beside her every morning and fall asleep with her in his arms every night. When he rode to Sienna's ranch that evening, she was waiting on the porch with 2 cups of coffee. She handed him one and sat down beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. "You are late today," she observed. "Boss wanted to talk about us." Sienna stiffened slightly. "What about us?" Reed took a breath and decided to be honest. "He thinks we should get married. For propriety's sake, to stop people from talking." He felt her pull away, not physically but emotionally, that wall of ice starting to rebuild around her. "Is that what you think too?" "No," Reed said firmly. "I think we should get married because we want to, not because society says we have to. And only when you are ready, not a moment before." She relaxed slightly. "I do not know if I will ever be ready for that. Marriage means belonging to someone, being under their control. I cannot go back to that." "That is not what marriage has to be," Reed said. He set down his coffee and turned to face her fully. "Sienna, if you married me, you would not belong to me. You would be my partner, my equal. We would make decisions together. Your ranch would still be yours. Your money would still be yours. The only thing that would change is that you would have someone to share your life with, someone who loves you and wants to see you happy." "You love me." Her voice was very small. "Yes, I love you. I have loved you since the first moment I saw you standing in the street like a ghost. I have loved you through every morning of coffee and every afternoon of work. I love who you are now and who you are becoming. And if you never love me back, that is all right. I will still be here, still trying to make you smile, because that is what you do when you love someone." Tears spilled down her cheeks, the first tears he had seen her cry. "I do not know if I can love you the way you deserve. I do not know if I remember how to love at all." Reed wiped her tears away with gentle fingers. "Then we will figure it out together. No rush, no pressure. Just you and me, taking it one day at a time. What if I fail? What if I am too broken to ever be what you need? You could not fail if you tried, and you are not broken. You are healing. There is a difference." She leaned into him, and Reed wrapped his arms around her, holding her while she cried for the first time in years. She cried for the girl she had been, for the dreams that had died, for the years she had lost to fear and pain. She cried until she had nothing left, and through it all Reed held her, steady and sure and unmoving. When the tears finally stopped, Sienna pulled back and looked at him with red-rimmed eyes. "I think I could love you," she said softly. "I think maybe I already do a little bit, but I am scared." "That is all right. Being scared does not mean you are doing it wrong. It just means you are being honest. Will you be patient with me, for as long as it takes?" She kissed him then, deep and searching, and Reed felt her beginning to open up, to let him in past those high walls. When they broke apart, she was almost smiling again. "Stay for dinner," she said. "Stay as long as you want. I would like that." They cooked together, moving around the kitchen with practiced ease, and Reed caught her humming under her breath. It was not laughter, not yet, but it was closer than she had been before. After dinner, they sat on the porch wrapped in blankets against the cold, watching stars emerge in the vast desert sky. "Tell me about your dreams," Sienna said quietly. "The things you want out of life." Reed thought about it. "I want land of my own someday. Not a big operation, just enough to run some cattle and horses. I want a family, kids running around and learning to ride. I want to wake up every morning next to someone I love and know that I am exactly where I am supposed to be." He paused. "What about you? What do you want?" Sienna was quiet for a long time. "I want to feel safe," she said finally. "Really safe, in a way I have not felt since I was a child. I want to trust someone completely and not be afraid they will hurt me. I want to remember what it feels like to be happy, to laugh without fearing the consequences." She looked at him. "I want to learn how to love again. I want to want things without feeling guilty for wanting them." "You can have all of that," Reed said. "You deserve all of that. Do I?" Her voice was wistful. "Sometimes I wonder if I am being punished for something, if I did something wrong in another life and this is my penance." "No," Reed said fiercely. "You did nothing wrong. You were a victim of a cruel man's choices. That is not your fault, and you are not being punished. You are just healing, and healing takes time." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "How did you get so wise?" "I am not wise. I just know that good people deserve good things, and you are the best person I have ever met." They sat like that until the cold drove them inside, and Reed reluctantly prepared to leave. Sienna walked him to the door, her hand caught in his. "Will you think about what Thomas said?" she asked. "About making things proper, only if you want me to." "I do not know what I want yet. But I am thinking about what it might be like to be married to someone kind, someone who makes me feel safe instead of afraid." She squeezed his hand. "Give me time, please. All the time you need." December arrived with a cold snap that left frost on the ground each morning and ice in the water troughs. Reed continued his daily visits to Sienna's ranch, but now he stayed overnight more often, sleeping in the spare room when the weather was too bad to ride back to Carrizo Ranch. Thomas had given him his blessing, understanding that Reed's heart was no longer in his job as foreman but somewhere else entirely. One morning, Reed woke to find snow falling, soft and silent, covering the desert in rare white. He dressed quickly and went to the kitchen, where Sienna was already making coffee. She looked up when he entered, and there was something new in her eyes. Warmth, affection, maybe even love. "It is snowing," she said, as if he might not have noticed. "So it is. I have not seen snow in years." Martin hated it. He said it made everything ugly and difficult. She walked to the window and pressed her hand against the glass. "But I always loved it. It makes everything look clean. New." Reed joined her at the window, standing close enough that their shoulders touched. "Maybe that is what you need. A chance to start new, to let the past get covered up and forgotten." "I do not think I can forget, but maybe I can learn to remember without it hurting so much." They spent the day inside, warm and comfortable, doing small domestic tasks that felt significant in their ordinariness. Sienna showed Reed how she liked to organize the pantry, and he taught her a card game his father had taught him. They made stew for dinner and ate it by the fireplace, talking about nothing and everything. As the evening wore on, Sienna grew quieter, more thoughtful. Finally, she set down her cup and looked at Reed directly. "I have been thinking," she said. "About what you said. About marriage being a partnership instead of ownership." Reed's heart started to beat faster. And I think I want that with you, if the offer is still there." "Sienna." Reed moved to kneel in front of her, taking her hands in his. "Are you sure? I do not want you to do this because you feel obligated or because of gossip. I want you to marry me because you love me, because you cannot imagine your life without me in it. I do love you, she said, and there were tears in her eyes again, but they were different tears this time. Happy tears. I did not think I could, but I do. You have given me back pieces of myself I thought were lost forever. You have been patient and kind, and you have never once made me afraid. I want to spend my life with you. I want to wake up beside you and fall asleep in your arms and build something good together. Reed felt his own eyes sting. Then yes, 1,000 times yes. I will marry you, Sienna Ortega, and I will spend every day of my life making sure you never regret it. He kissed her, deep and passionate, and Sienna kissed him back with a fervor he had not felt from her before. When they broke apart, they were both breathing hard. When? Sienna asked. Whenever you want. Tomorrow, next week, next year. It does not matter to me as long as I know you are mine. Yours, she repeated, testing the word. I never thought I would want to belong to anyone again, but with you it does not feel like belonging. It feels like choosing, like freedom. That is what it should be. They talked late into the night, making plans and dreaming about their future together. They decided to get married after Christmas, giving Sienna time to prepare and Reed time to make arrangements to leave his job at Carrizo Ranch and move permanently to Sienna's place. They would combine their resources, run the ranch together as equal partners, build a life that belonged to both of them. When Reed finally went to bed in the spare room, he could not sleep. He lay awake thinking about how much had changed in just 4 months, how a woman who had seemed like a ghost was now vibrant and full of hope. He thought about the laughter he had not yet heard but knew was coming, buried somewhere deep inside Sienna and waiting to break free. Christmas came, and Reed spent it at Sienna's ranch. She had decorated the house with pine branches and candles, filling the rooms with the smell of evergreen and cinnamon. They exchanged simple gifts. Reed gave her a new bridle he had tooled with her initials, and Sienna gave him a pocket watch that had belonged to her father. I want you to have it, she said as he turned the watch over in his hands, admiring the engraving. My father was a good man. He would have liked you. I am honored, Reed said sincerely. I will treasure it. They cooked a turkey and all the trimmings, making far too much food for just 2 people. As they ate, Sienna told Reed stories about Christmases from her childhood, and he could hear the nostalgia in her voice, see the softness in her eyes. She was remembering how to feel joy, how to connect with happy memories without being pulled under by the bad ones. After dinner, they sat by the fire and Reed played his harmonica while Sienna listened. He played Christmas carols and folk songs, anything that came to mind. And then, as he was playing a particularly cheerful tune, it happened. Sienna laughed. It was not much, just a small sound, barely more than a breath, but it was there, real and genuine and utterly beautiful. Reed stopped playing immediately, staring at her. What? She asked, confused by his expression. You laughed. Sienna's hand flew to her mouth. I did. You did. Reed set down his harmonica and pulled her into his arms. You laughed, Sienna. You actually laughed. She started to cry, but this time the tears were definitely happy ones. I did not even realize. It just happened. I heard the music and I felt something light in my chest, and then it just came out. It was the most beautiful sound I have ever heard. She kissed him fiercely. You did this. You brought this back to me. You made me remember how to feel, how to be happy, how to laugh. No, Reed said gently. You did this. I just gave you a safe place to remember. You did all the hard work of healing yourself. They held each other for a long time, and Reed felt a profound sense of peace settle over him. This was what he had wanted, what he had been working toward since that first day he saw her standing empty-eyed in the street. He had wanted to hear her laugh, and now he had. Everything else was just extra blessing. The wedding was a small affair, held in the Piñon Church on January 3, 1879. Mrs. Henderson came, along with Thomas Carrizo and some of the hands from both ranches. The priest kept it simple, just the necessary words to bind them together in law and faith. Sienna wore a dress of soft cream-colored wool, and Reed wore his best clothes, clean and pressed for the occasion. When the priest pronounced them man and wife, Reed kissed Sienna with all the love in his heart, and he felt her smile against his lips. They walked out of the church hand in hand, into brilliant winter sunshine, and Sienna looked up at him with eyes that shone with happiness. "I am glad I met you," she said. "I am glad you did not give up on me. I never could have given up on you. You are everything I have been looking for my whole life, even before I knew I was looking." They held a small celebration at the ranch with food and music and dancing. Reed played his harmonica while Thomas fiddled, and Sienna danced with him in the middle of the living room. She was clumsy at first, having not danced in years, but Reed was patient, and soon they were moving together smoothly. And when someone told a joke and everyone laughed, Sienna laughed too, the sound bright and clear as a bell. That night, after everyone had gone home, Reed and Sienna stood on their porch looking out at the star-filled sky. Sienna was wrapped in Reed's arms, her head resting on his chest. "Are you happy?" he asked. "I did not think I could be," she admitted. "For so long I thought happiness was something that happened to other people. But yes, I am happy, truly happy. Good, because I plan to spend the rest of my life making sure you stay that way." They went inside together, to the bedroom that was now theirs, and Reed was gentle and careful, always mindful of Sienna's past trauma. But she surprised him with her eagerness, with the way she reached for him without fear. They made love slowly, tenderly, and afterwards Sienna cried again, but they were healing tears. "It was never like that before," she whispered. "I did not know it could be like that." "It will always be like that between us," Reed promised. "Always gentle, always good, always your choice." "I choose you," she said. "Today and every day I choose you." The winter passed in a blur of happiness. Reed settled into life at the ranch, working alongside Sienna to keep things running smoothly. They made a good team, anticipating each other's needs and supporting each other through challenges. The ranch thrived under their joint management, and the hands respected them both. But more importantly, Sienna continued to heal. She laughed more often now, at jokes and silly mishaps and the antics of the barn cats. She smiled easily, especially when she looked at Reed. She sang while she cooked and hummed while she worked. All the life that Martin Ortega had tried to beat out of her came flooding back, stronger and brighter than before because she had fought so hard to reclaim it. Spring brought wildflowers to the desert, carpets of yellow and purple that stretched to the horizon. Reed and Sienna rode out together often, checking the herds and mending fences, but also just enjoying the beauty of the land and each other's company. One afternoon, they stopped by a creek to water the horses, and Sienna suddenly splashed Reed with the cold water. He yelped in surprise and she laughed, a full throaty laugh that made his heart soar. "You should see your face." "Oh, you think that is funny," Reed said, grinning. He scooped up water and splashed her back. She shrieked and ran, and he chased her, both of them laughing like children. When he caught her, he spun her around in his arms and kissed her soundly. She was soaking wet and her hair was coming loose from its braid, and she had never looked more beautiful. "I love you," he said. "God, I love you so much." "I love you too," she said, breathless from running and laughing. "I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone." That summer, Sienna discovered she was pregnant. She told Reed one morning in late June, her eyes shining with a mixture of joy and fear. "I am carrying your child," she said. "We are going to have a baby." Reed whooped with delight and picked her up, spinning her around before carefully setting her back down. A baby. We are going to have a baby. Sienna, that is wonderful. Are you not worried? She asked. About how I will be as a mother, about whether I can do this. Not even a little bit, Reed said firmly. You are going to be an amazing mother. You are kind and strong and full of love. Our child is lucky to have you. She rested her hand on her still flat stomach. I want to do it right. I want to give our baby everything I never had. Safety. Love. A home where laughter is encouraged, not punished. We will do it together, Reed promised. Just like everything else. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Sienna bloomed with it, her face glowing and her body growing round with their child. Reed was attentive and protective, making sure she did not overwork herself, bringing her tea and rubbing her swollen feet in the evenings. They spent long hours talking about names and making plans for the nursery, both of them giddy with anticipation. In early March of 1880, Sienna went into labor. Mrs. Henderson came to help, along with the doctor from town. Reed paced outside the bedroom door for hours, listening to Sienna's cries and feeling helpless. Finally, just after dawn, he heard a new sound, the wail of a newborn baby, Mrs. Henderson opened the door with a huge smile on her face. Mr. O'Sullivan, you have a son. A big, healthy boy. Reed rushed into the room and found Sienna propped up on pillows, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. She looked up at him with tears streaming down her face. Look, she whispered. Look what we made. Reed sat beside her on the bed and peered down at his son. The baby had a shock of dark hair and scrunched-up features that were already so familiar, a perfect blend of him and Sienna. He felt his own tears start to fall. He is perfect, Reed said hoarsely. You are perfect. I cannot believe this is real. Believe it, Sienna said, laughing through her tears. This is our family, Reed. This is our happy ending. They named the baby James, after Sienna's father. And from the moment he entered the world, he brought even more joy to their lives. Reed was a devoted father, getting up in the night to walk with James when he fussed, changing diapers without complaint, spending hours just staring at his son in wonder. Sienna was a natural mother, patient and loving, singing lullabies and telling stories. As James grew from infant to toddler, the house filled with laughter. Reed would play his harmonica and James would dance, wobbling on unsteady legs. Sienna would chase him through the house, both of them giggling. They had family dinners where they all sat together, talking about their day and making plans for tomorrow. 2 years later, they had a daughter. They named her Rose, and she had her mother's dark eyes and her father's red hair. She was a firecracker from the start, loud and demanding and full of personality. James adored his baby sister, and Reed and Sienna marveled at how their family had grown. The ranch prospered under their care. They expanded their herds, bought more land, built a bigger barn. But they never lost sight of what was truly important, each other, and the love that had brought them through darkness into light. One evening, when James was 5 and Rose was 3, the family was sitting on the porch watching the sunset. James was playing with carved wooden horses that Reed had made for him, and Rose was in Sienna's lap drowsing. Reed sat beside his wife, his arm around her shoulders, feeling completely content. "You remember the day we met?" Sienna asked suddenly. "Of course." "You were standing outside the general store looking like a ghost." "I was a ghost," she said, "or close enough. I did not think I would ever feel alive again." She turned to look at him, her eyes soft with love. "Thank you for refusing to give up on me. Thank you for believing I could heal when I did not believe it myself." "You did all the work," Reed said. "I just gave you a reason to try." "You gave me everything," Sienna corrected. "A home, a family, A reason to laugh again. You gave me my life back. You gave me mine too. Before I met you, I was just drifting. I did not know what I was looking for until I found you. Sienna kissed him, soft and sweet, and Rose stirred in her arms. James looked up from his toys and smiled at his parents. "Are you two kissing again?" he asked, wrinkling his nose in childish disgust. "Yes, we are," Reed said, grinning. "And we are going to keep kissing for a long, long time. You better get used to it." James groaned dramatically, but he was smiling too. Their family was full of love and laughter and joy. Everything Sienna had thought was lost to her forever. She looked around at her husband and her children and her home, and she felt gratitude so profound it almost hurt. "I never imagined I could be this happy," she said quietly to Reed while the children played. "After everything that happened, I thought I was destined to just survive, not to live. But you taught me different. You taught me that I deserved more than survival. You taught me that I deserved love." "You do," Reed said. "You deserve all the love in the world." As the years passed, their love only deepened. They weathered droughts and hard winters, lost cattle and repaired storm damage, dealt with all the challenges that came with ranching in the harsh New Mexico landscape. But they did it together, always partners, always equals. And through it all, Sienna's laughter rang out bright and clear, a sound that never failed to make Reed's heart swell with pride and love. They had 2 more children, another boy and another girl, and the house was always full of noise and chaos and happiness. Reed taught all his children to ride and rope, to work hard and treat people with respect. Sienna taught them to read and do sums, to appreciate beauty and kindness. Together, they created a home where love was abundant and laughter was encouraged, where their children never had to fear a raised hand or harsh word. On their 10th anniversary, Reed and Sienna renewed their vows in the same little church where they had been married. All 4 of their children were present, along with friends and neighbors who had watched their love story unfold. When the priest asked if Reed would take Sienna as his wife, Reed answered with a resounding yes that made everyone smile. "I would marry you 100 times over," he said, looking into her eyes. "In this life and every life after, you are my heart, Sienna. You always will be." Sienna's vows were just as heartfelt. "You saved my life," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Not just from the darkness, but from the belief that I was not worth saving. You showed me that I was strong and worthy and capable of love. You gave me a family and a home and a future I never dared to dream about. I love you, Reed O'Sullivan, with every piece of my heart." They kissed to thunderous applause, and their children cheered. That night, they celebrated with a party that lasted until the stars came out, full of music and dancing and laughter. Later, when all the guests had gone home and the children were asleep, Reed and Sienna stood on their porch as they had so many times before. Sienna was nestled in Reed's arms, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "You ever think about how different things could have been?" she asked. "If you had not stopped that day, if you had not kept coming back, sometimes," Reed admitted. "But then I remember that I could not have done anything else. From the moment I saw you, I knew you were important. I knew I had to try. I am glad you did. I am glad you saw something in me worth saving, even when I could not see it myself." "I saw everything," Reed said softly. "I saw strength and courage and a woman who refused to let cruelty break her completely. I saw someone worth fighting for, worth being patient for. I saw the woman I wanted to spend my life with." Sienna tilted her face up to his. "My laughter had died years before I met you. I thought it was gone forever, but you brought it back. You made it your mission to hear it again, and you succeeded. You gave me back the part of myself I thought was lost." "Your laughter is my favorite sound in the world," Reed said. Better than music, better than rain, better than anything. Every time I hear it, I fall in love with you all over again." They kissed under the starlight, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful together. Their love story was not perfect or easy, but it was real and true and enduring. It was a love story that had started in darkness but ended in light, that had taken patience and courage and unwavering faith. Years continued to pass. Their children grew up strong and happy, married and had children of their own. The ranch continued to prosper, becoming one of the most successful operations in the territory. But through everything, Reed and Sienna remained devoted to each other, still holding hands on the porch at sunset, still stealing kisses in the barn, still making each other laugh after decades together. When Reed was 62 and Sienna was 59, they sat on that same porch where so much of their life had unfolded. Their hair was gray now, their bodies weathered by time and hard work, but their love was as strong as ever. Their grandchildren were playing in the yard, their laughter carrying on the desert wind. "I have been thinking," Sienna said, watching the children play, "about legacy, about what we leave behind when we are gone." "And what have you decided?" Reed asked. "That our legacy is not the ranch or the land or the money. It is this." She gestured to the children. "It is the love we have given each other and our children and grandchildren. It is the proof that even broken things can be made whole again, that even the darkest nights eventually give way to dawn. Our legacy is hope." Reed squeezed her hand. "That is a good legacy." "It is all because of you," Sienna said, "because you refused to give up. Because you made it your mission to hear me laugh again." "And I have heard it every day since," Reed said. "Every single day for over 30 years. That is more than I ever dreamed of." Sienna laughed then, that same bright, clear sound that had first emerged on Christmas Eve so long ago. It rang out across the desert, full of joy and life and love, and Reed thought it was still the most beautiful sound he had ever heard. They sat together as the sun set, painting the New Mexico sky in shades of gold and crimson, surrounded by the family they had built and the love they had nurtured. Two people who had found each other in the darkest of times and created light together, proving that healing was possible, that love could conquer even the deepest wounds, and that laughter could return even to the most broken hearts. Their story was not just a love story, though it was certainly that. It was a story of redemption and resilience, of patience and faith, of one person's determination to help another person find their way back to joy. It was a story about how the right kind of love, the gentle, patient kind, could work miracles. And in the end, that was the truth that Reed and Sienna carried with them through all their years together. Love was not just about passion or romance, though they had plenty of both. Love was about seeing someone at their worst and believing in their best. Love was about showing up every single day and choosing each other over and over again. Love was about making someone laugh when they had forgotten how, and then spending a lifetime making sure they never forgot again. As the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, Sienna turned to Reed one more time. "I love you," she said simply. "I always will." "I love you too," Reed replied. "Until the end of time and beyond." They kissed, tender and sweet, and their grandchildren whooped and hollered in mock disgust, just as their own children had done years before. The cycle of life and love continued, generation after generation, all of it built on the foundation that Reed and Sienna had laid together in those early days in Piñon, New Mexico, when a cowboy had looked at a broken woman and decided to help her remember how to laugh. That laughter echoed through the years, a testament to the power of love and the possibility of healing, a sound that would carry on long after they were gone, living in the hearts and memories of everyone they had touched. It was the sound of hope made real, of darkness overcome, of a mission accomplished beyond all expectations. And in the quiet moments before sleep that night, lying in bed with Reed's arms around her, Sienna smiled in the darkness and whispered a prayer of gratitude for the cowboy who had refused to give up on her, for the man who had made it his mission to hear her laugh again, and who had succeeded beyond both their wildest dreams. She had been given a second chance at life and love, and she had not wasted it. Neither had Reed. Together, they had built something extraordinary out of broken pieces, creating beauty where there had been only pain. Their love story had started with silence and ended with laughter, and that made all the difference.